Hey, this is Jianda Monique, and I'm here with Ryan Henry Ward, better known as Henry. Wikipedia calls him Seattle's most prolific muralist, and he's like the unofficial town greeter for everyone who visits Seattle. His whimsical art, spirit, and magic can be found everywhere. You're welcome to check out information about him at ryanhenryward.com. And I'm just going to read a little bio about him. If you want to find the whole bio, just go to ryanhenryward.com/about-Henry. You can find out the latest news about him, see his galleries there, contact him, subscribe to his newsletter, and order his merch, which will definitely add magic to your life. So essentially, he's been publicly active as an artist since 2008, but prior to then, he did go to art school. He was an artist in his native Enumclaw, and his art has gone through several iterations. You can also check him out at Patreon to become a patron of his for as little as $1 a month. Your donation will help him continue to create, share, explore, and grow, and every little bit helps. So he welcomes your donation, and just support him. He's got a gift shop. He can create a mural for you, pictures of your pets. I mean, this guy is great at diversification, and he's so magical. There's nothing corporate about this dude, but he is an entity and an energy of his own and a beautiful force. Again, visit him at ryanhenryward.com and give him your hugs and your love and your dough. That's ryanhenryward.com. Cheers. All right. Well, thank you for your time again.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So, sitting here with Ryan Henry Ward, the artist known and loved as Henry. And got so many questions for you. But, mainly I was wondering if you could, share just a summary of your journey. I was reading a little bit about your experience and how you came from Montana and made your way to Washington and kind of out in Enumclaw and somehow made it to Seattle from there.
Yeah.
I know that you have done a lot of social work and traveled and how did you make it from those more rural kind of chill environments to city life in Seattle?
Right. Yeah. It's always a shock living in Seattle, or an adjustment for myself psychologically, just because I was raised more in a rural kind of situation. I was raised in a farmhouse that my great grandfather built way back in the day, and so we had a big farm in Montana, and then just work related stuff, we kind of migrated to Washington when I was about 10, and ended up in another kind of rural town of Enumclaw. But I've always ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to know what was in the world, I always even as just really early on, looking out over the mountains in Montana, wondering what's on the other side, wondering what's beyond where I'm at. And I've always had kind of this adventurous spirit, and I still do. Even growing up in Enumclaw, it was I moved to Bellingham, and from there I just wanted to travel the world, and I did. Kind of right after college, I went to Southeast Asia and India and Nepal, and eventually the next year went to Africa, Southern Africa, and back to Southeast Asia, and lived in Bangkok for a while doing I guess some of my early social work stuff, which was helping Burmese refugees get refugee status and stuff like that. So I was helping translate their stories. And then when I got back from that, I kind of dove into being a social worker for about 5 years. So I did a bunch of different stuff within that field. And then kind of got burnt out on social work, wanted to really make things with my hands. I always felt that part of me was kind of missing in my work, was I wanted to create with my hands, and So I got into landscaping with my brother, landscape construction, which kind of fulfilled that part of me. I was able to build like rockeries and like water features and different things, you know. So I kind of was getting my artistic fulfillment through landscaping, and then I got injured in a four-wheeler accident, which kind of got me into more doing the fine art thing for a living.
Wow.
So that's kind of brief synopsis, brief history
amazing.
of how I got to the point where, okay, I'm going to make a living as an artist, which happened at about age 32. Is kind of when I was like, okay, I'm injured. I can't really do a lot of this other work. I didn't really want to go back into social work. I couldn't do any physical construction, so painting is kind of what ended up taking over.
And have you always done painting or drawing or design or that type of thing, or was it just out of necessity?
The professional part of it was out of necessity, but yeah, it's always been a part of me ever since I was a little kid. I was cartooning. I was really into... Well, being from Montana, I didn't have like access to art museums or really art culture. It was like, Sunday morning cartoons in the paper, or what was on, the Looney Tunes on TV or whatever. Very limited access to like even what was on television. We never had cable or anything like that, so it was like, Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes and Garfield and the Peanuts. That's kind of like my art influence growing up, and children's books. And so that's like really when I started making art and doing stuff, that was my influence, and and that was when my creative direction started at a really young age, and that was my influence around me. And so I think a lot of what you see in my work is influenced from that early part of my life, because that's really where I was turned on and working and starting my craft without even really knowing it,
Wow. Yeah.
So
how does it make you feel to be able to create art on such a massive scale? I mean, mural scale is different than on a smaller canvas or individually commissioned works. I mean, it's a real statement when you're making paintings, murals that are publicly available and seen. It has a different impact.
yeah, it definitely does. It's been a learning curve for me, and how to and how that kind of learning how it even affects people, and learning that it does, and things like that. I remember doing my first mural in Seattle, and it was on the parade route for the solstice parade, and I did it the day, I think I painted it the day before the solstice parade. And I remember being so excited that so many people were going to see this thing. Mm-hmm. And then it was right kind of at the entrance of a gallery that I was in. And so I was like, oh, this is going to really get attention and get noticed and stuff. And I was more concerned about doing murals as or I kind of saw them as oh, that'll help my canvases sell, Mm-hmm. And it, I don't know if it has or hasn't or what, but I didn't really realize what being a muralist meant or being a public artist meant at the time. And it's been kind of fun to watch how it does affect people and how it does affect community, because I just didn't really enter it thinking along those terms as much as just being excited that that I could do them and people wanted them, and it just kind of right when I got started with them in Seattle, it's been pretty much nonstop. I think I did 35 murals my first year. Yeah, so 2008, I got 35 murals up, which was more than anyone else in the city has had, Yeah. And so it was whoa, within 1 year I was already at this point where I had a pretty big body of work up. And then 2 years into it, I had 70 murals up. And so it was now I have 221. But it's just been this nonstop. People like it and want more of it, and there's enough people that I guess own walls or have walls that like my stuff that I'm able to kind of continue this path of painting, I guess, what's in my head and sharing it with the world. And it's an interesting communication. first I kind of think like public art. I always kind of approached it like it's like who's in the public, you know, and I think most public artists don't consider children as part of the public. And when I'm outside, I see like a lot of adults walking around, but there's a lot of kids walking around too, you know. There's a lot of preschoolers like holding hands and chains and, you know, in big groups walking from one, you know, place to another, or like, you know, parents with their kids, or there's kids out all over the place. And what do they have to look at, you know, like something that's like only somebody with an art history degree can comprehend, you know. That's not really fair, you know. And so like, I don't know, it's been kind of my mission not only to make art for kids, but like to make it at least so they're included in the conversation of public art, you know.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like, even I saw I think a picture of the Dalai Lama that you painted, and like the magical, mystical side of him, the childlike side of him, definitely like shone through.
Yeah.
And so much of your art, it's like rabbits and you know, unicorns and just magical things. I mean, you are very prolific, and it's just, what inspires you?
Oh, that's interesting that you brought up the Dalai Lama because an inspiration, because I was down, I think it was like my third or fourth mural in Seattle or something. I was down in the Soto district, and I got a wall down there, and I started painting it the same day the Dalai Lama was in Seattle talking about compassion towards children. And so he was like 2 blocks away from me or something, or 3 blocks away at the football stadium, giving this speech on compassion for children, and I'm painting this mural that's like, you know, and I'm thinking about him being there, giving that speech. I wasn't at the speech because I was painting this mural, but like, I was thinking about that happening and the impact that him being in town was having. And so I painted this kid riding a fish, and it kind of like got it into my mind, that whole idea, that whole connection of like, you know, compassion in children, you know, and like how kind of important that is. And it affected the design of the mural, and it kind of affected my work kind of in public from then on out. You know, it's like, what's really important here? What are we really doing? You know, like what are we doing for the children? And like what are they when they live in the city, and what is forming them into the adults they're becoming, you know. And like when I was a 5-year-old, I didn't have big, colorful, loving murals with magical creatures on them. I can't even imagine what that's like, you know, for like a 5-year-old who's like so alive in their imagination they can see something very 2-dimensional and go home and dream about it, and it becomes real, you know. I want to keep creating that world that encourages imagination and encourages compassion.
It comes through in your work. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I know you have a website, right? It's ryanhenryward.com.
Yeah.
So people can buy art there or ask for commissions there?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me through there. Right now my online store isn't open. I did have it open for a while, but I just kind of didn't have the time and energy to be mailing stuff out and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm open to doing commission work, and I do like custom canvases, and I also can point people in directions of finding my work that's and access to my shows and stuff like that.
And you have tons of merch.
I do,
and
yeah.
Stickers and shirts.
Yeah, I kind of like having it on me. Like I like having like stuff, especially when I'm painting a mural. If someone like actually stops their car, gets out, and talks to me, I like having something to give them, you know. So I like giving them like a print pack or a print. Like last year, I had in my van, I always had like prints of different zodiac signs that I did, and so I was like, ask people, what's your sign? And they were like, well, why do you care? I'm a Leo. And then I'd be like, bam, here's a Leo, you know. They'd be like, oh God, you know. It's
I remember seeing those in Bauhaus before.
Oh yeah,
God rest its soul, Bauhaus
right
in Capitol.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yep.
man, so cool.
Yeah.
So there's stickers of those too? Like
I just have prints of those.
Oh, prints of those.
Yeah.
Cool.
I should get stickers of those made. That'd be cool.
Oh, fun.
I haven't done that, but...
Wow. And I know you do music too, right? Like you've been branching into music more?
Yeah. I've been a harmonica player for a lot of years. 20... I don't know how many years. 25 years or something like that, and I record on people's albums. I've probably 2 albums a year on an average I record on, something like that, and then I play live shows with different bands and people just randomly. Yeah, and now I'm working on writing an album right now with a friend, and I'm doing the guitar and writing the lyrics and stuff like that for it, but it's we're hoping to have an album out in a year or so, something like that. But
it's exciting.
Yeah, just doing different stuff,
Just every day, just working every day. I think that's great. Or playing every day.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I do like different like music and art and whatever. It's all kind of every day I'm in that mode of creating. It's really important to me to stay in that mode, even if I'm not making money at it. Like, I do a lot of things that aren't just directed at like professional art, and that's an aspect. That's an aspect of what I do. It's a big aspect of what I do, but it's there's probably 50% of what I do artistically doesn't have to do with or translate as professionalism. It's more for just soul fulfillment. And
what are some of your favorite projects or moments of creativity, or things that you always think back on and think fondly about? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think, for me it's like this, I get these big long-term drives. I mean, even like my art career, like starting it, like I remember years before that thinking, okay, if I'm going to do an art career, I know the only way I'm going to be able to do this is like get rid of everything I own, live in a vehicle, and like, push that from the ground up. I knew years before I did do that was the approach I wanted to take, because I knew that's how I operate and how it feels best, is to go all in with stuff, and kind of like survival mode stuff. So it's like, well, if I don't sell any art, I'm going to starve, and just that motivation of like survival to like actually make things happen, and then doing that, like kind of following through with these like ideas, I think is what really kind of turns me on, is like having an idea, really thinking it through for even years, and then like executing the vision like after it's really kind of taken time to develop. Like my big solo shows have all been kind of that. Like my last one was By the Power of Grayscale, and it was all black and white, shades of gray kind of work, and I conceptualized the show, I think in 2013 is where I first had the idea of doing a black and white show, and then it didn't actually happen until 2016. So it kind of worked its way for 3 years in the back of my head, how it was going to come together and come out. And then, the execution of it was actually just 3 months worth of work and then a big show. But like, it really was 3 years worth of thinking work that went behind the actual work. So it's like some of those things that are really powerful and good, like my solo shows. Even I did the one before that was called I Myth You, and it was just, I always wanted to do a show based on mythology and world mythology and stuff like that, kind of and it took a while to formulate. It took a few years as well to formulate and conceptualize and really like be able to articulate it how I wanted to articulate it. And a lot of that kind of thing is how can I challenge, where do I need to grow, like asking myself those kind of questions, like where do I need to grow as a person, as an artist, and how can I utilize this next like solo show to do that, where's my weakness? What do people know me for? How can I challenge them and myself? And kind of blast out of these like boxes that I put myself in or other people put me in, or and I just think that that's healthy for our culture to see, kind of encourage everybody to do that.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, these times are so challenging, and they always are challenging, but it just seems like our current culture is especially challenging. So, I mean, I appreciate the loving energy of your art and stickers and murals, and
thank you.
Even your posts are very, thought-provoking and healing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And it just makes me curious, like, how do you refill your well or your spirituality? Is it the art that does it? Is it a spiritual practice that does it?
It's a combination of things, I guess. A lot of it's just hiking in the woods, spending time with my family, going for long walks, on the beach. No, I'm just kidding.
Turn on.
Yeah. Candlelight dinners. I don't know. I think there's like this instinct, thing that happens in our bodies where like we really know what we need, and being able to listen to that is kind of what I've found most important. And it's been a growing thing for me. So I've been doing this thing professionally for a little over 9 years now, and I think the first couple years it was like pedal to the metal, full blast, going for it. I don't have any time to spare on this mission to get where I want to go, and I burnt myself out in different ways, and like the kind of like way I've had to pay for that kind of like thing, like replenishing, having to take like long periods of time off to replenish to get back going again. Like I've had to learn to like pace myself, I'm very compulsive, and I'm very driven, and I'm very like I can lock into like ideas and stick with them and stuff, but I also can overdo that, and so it's like finding the balance and like finding those places that like replenish my spirit more on a daily basis than like not stopping for 6 months and then needing like a couple months off, kind of thing, where I can like I guess like I have like this big I had a big solo show, and I just needed some time off, and I took some time off until I didn't need time off, and I didn't like push my way into something else. I just kind of like, whoa, I'm like my chi is spent, and I need to like, Netflix and chill, as they say, for a while or something, not create for a while and just absorb and take in and relax and do some other things, and then it comes back, and it's kind of having the faith that it will come back, and that drive always does, all of a sudden, boom, I got an idea, and then I got another idea, and then like, oh god, I got to do this thing, that always kind of comes back if you just relax a little bit and let it.
Yeah. And I know you're going to be traveling with your art,
Mm-hmm.
and anticipate more good things to come. So
Yeah.
what's the horizon looking like for you in the next year, or even next couple months even?
Well, it looks like I'm going to be doing a job up in Bellingham. I got a big job coming up in Spokane. I think I'm looking at doing one in Bend, Oregon. So the surrounding areas are kind of pulling me into them, but I also want to kind of push out beyond that, and I want to travel and promote myself a little bit out in the world in a bigger way. I like traveling and working and stuff like that. So I think being beyond and outside of Seattle is kind of where my vision's heading, and I'm kind of preparing for that.
Mm-hmm.
I just bought a motorhome so I can travel and make art on the road and live and can do my thing from a Millennial Falcon kind of point of view.
Dang, that's gonna be so cool. Like, what an adventure.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
I got my dog who behaves a lot like Chewbacca, so I think we're good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just love your body of work, and
Thanks.
it's just so healing, and
Thank you.
I just really appreciate your sharing your heart and what makes you tick, you know.
Thanks.
I feel like it'll help spark other people, and we really need it right now. We all really need it right now.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like we're kind of in political divisive times, and there's a lot of like push for separatism and stuff like that, and I'm like all about diversity and inclusiveness and understanding people and where they're from rather than pushing them away because they're different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, and I actually think the majority of the world is on par and agrees with me on that. And so I have faith in humanity. I have faith in the world that the people that want, I don't know, separation of people and this and that are a small minority that are like, you know, power hungry people, and I don't think that that's gonna like last long, you know. I'm kind of optimistic, I guess. So
cool.
Yeah,
I hope everyone follows suit in that line of thinking.
Yeah, well, I think they already are. I think it's just natural too, because it's like we all have like so much invested in each other throughout the world now more than ever. Like, you know, we have family members that are living in different countries. We got, you know, I have friends that are teaching in the, you know, Middle East, and I don't want them to get bombed. I know them on a personal level, and I think that that's kind of like, you know, happening more and more in the world and worldwide. Is like we are like communicating more with people from other countries and other cultures, and we're living together more. We're like, so I don't think that this vision of like angry separatism is gonna have or even be able to last through reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think reality is something much different than what they're proposing, and like, I don't know, it was like watching like a presidential inauguration and watching this new president talk about his vision of what or how he perceives the world as this dark, dismal, angry place. I'm like, what is wrong with him? You know, what's happened to his brain? Because like I see it as a like, and I've traveled a lot, I've been around a lot, and like I've found the majority of the world to be loving, compassionate, like hospitable people. Like everywhere I've been. And I mean, I've been to a ton of countries, and like I don't know what, and a ton of states. I've been to like I think 38 of the 50 states, and traveling and being you know, in a position where I've needed people's help a lot and stuff like that. And doors have always been opened to me by people that are different than me, and I just don't have the same maybe experience of this angry, hostile world that he's talking about. You know, I mean, angry, hostile things happen in our world, but I believe that it's a loving, compassionate place. And I think people really want to love and help each other. Like I think we're all built like that. And some people get a little sick in the head and get greedy and like lose that vision, lose track of it, and they want to convince everybody that it's a hostile, horrible place so they can have power. But like, I don't think most of us are there, you know.
Yeah, it shines through in your art too. So thank you for making it.
Yeah, yeah, you bet.
Yeah. And thanks for taking the time to talk. And
yeah, it was really nice. Nice to meet you.
You too. You too. And happy travels.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Right on. Hey, this is Jianda Monique, and I'm here with Ryan Henry Ward, better known as Henry. Wikipedia calls him Seattle's most prolific muralist, and he's like the unofficial town greeter for everyone who visits Seattle. His whimsical art, spirit, and magic can be found everywhere. You're welcome to check out information about him at ryanhenryward.com. And I'm just going to read a little bio about him. If you want to find the whole bio, just go to ryanhenryward.com/about-Henry. You can find out the latest news about him, see his galleries there, contact him, subscribe to his newsletter, and order his merch, which will definitely add magic to your life. So essentially, he's been publicly active as an artist since 2008, but prior to then, he did go to art school. He was an artist in his native Enumclaw, and his art has gone through several iterations. You can also check him out at Patreon to become a patron of his for as little as $1 a month. Your donation will help him continue to create, share, explore, and grow, and every little bit helps. So he welcomes your donation, and just support him. He's got a gift shop. He can create a mural for you, pictures of your pets. I mean, this guy is great at diversification, and he's so magical. There's nothing corporate about this dude, but he is an entity and an energy of his own and a beautiful force. Again, visit him at ryanhenryward.com and give him your hugs and your love and your dough. That's ryanhenryward.com. Cheers.